All right, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today was not great. This includes the last three videos, so the early game slate, the evening slate, and the Friday games. I'm going 15, 15, and 2 against the spread. Lost about 1.5 units today, and just lost juice on Friday. But yeah, a lot of frustrating games. I'm going to briefly go through them extremely quickly. Creighton game. Uh, really slow first half, but then they dominated later. Tulane, similarly, relatively slow first half, ended up dominating at the end of the game. TCU, they shot 1 for 20 from 3. Let's not talk about that game. I think they have a good chance of covering, even if they hit like 25% from 3. But shooting 1 for 3 was just pathetic. Michigan State, they were winning upwards of 10 in the first half. I think Rutgers hits a 2, and then Michigan State has 2 more chances at the buzzer, but ends up pushing. Bryant, very close to not covering, but they win by 14. Pretty slow domination that game. IUPUE, this game was close to backdooring. It was kind of back and forth where they were covering and then getting blown out, then covering, then getting blown out. And then at the very end, they end up losing the game by 10, so they don't cover. Quinnipiac also won by 11, very, very close cover. Idaho, winning by 3 at half, ended up losing the game by, I think, 6. Just collapsed a bit. Appalachian State, they didn't do shit in the first half. They started to pull away near the end, but they only ended up winning that game by 8. Morgan State, just classic domination against Coppin State. Nothing surprising. Butler, finally getting into the win column more with Butler. They really do have good advanced stats, so I'm probably going to end up betting them a lot just because their record is so poor. You can usually get really good lines on them, but they end up winning this game by double digits. Florida Gulf Coast also winning the game at half, or at least really close at half. They pulled away at some points, but they end up losing this game by a few possessions. Duke, absolutely pathetic game from Duke. They were up like 13 at half, went up to 15 at some point, and then they gave up like a 20-0 run basically. We're down 4 with like 10 minutes left. Finally pulled back to, I think, they end up winning this game by 7 or 8. But yeah, that little collapse in the middle of the game completely killed the cover, unfortunately. North Dakota State, they were leading by 12 at some point, but they're never really dominating. They didn't shoot well enough from 3 to make up for the fact that they weren't defending in the paint. So North Dakota got a lot of free baskets. West Virginia, another just started the game down like 19-1 or something ridiculous. They fought back throughout the entire game, but they end up losing the game, I think, by 12 or something. Just hard to come back from a massive deficit on the road like that. Auburn, they just could never win. They were never really winning that game. It was pretty even the entire time. I thought with Brooms coming back, it would have been a great matchup for them at home where they've been dominating teams like Tennessee. Broom shot like, I don't know, I can't remember, it was like 7 for 20 or something. So it wasn't actually a difference maker. Probably would have been better if he didn't play, to be honest. He looked like shit. So they end up only winning that game by 2 points. Alabama A&M kept it pretty close all game, ended up losing by 4. Portland State dominated most of the game. Mississippi Valley State, they were basically tied at half, and then they kind of scrambling pulled up to like a 14-point lead, and then I was kind of thinking, okay, my bet's dead, but they ended up only losing by 11, I think. Ole Miss, that was pretty annoying. They were pretty close the entire game, within like single digits, kind of hitting points, but then not defending well enough. They end up, I think, losing by 6 or 7. Coastal, yeah, they're permanently banned. This is the second time they've had short spreads and lost by double digits, so I'm not betting them as road dogs ever again. North Alabama, also a team that kind of pissed me off. They were up by 10 with like a few minutes left. Thought they would maybe pull it through, but they ended up almost losing the game outright. They just couldn't hit their threes. Seems to be the moral of today. Xavier ended up winning. I only ended up taking the money line in this game, but they do cover the 1.5 as well. LSU kind of got a little sweaty near the end, but for the most part, they were keeping it really competitive with Alabama, so that one was relatively non-sweat. Montana State, they were down at half, almost came back, but yeah, they end up losing the game in the free throw era of the game. I think they lose by 6 or 7. And then the last 2 were pretty sweat-free. San Diego State just dominated the game, won outright by 20 points, and Utah Valley kept it pretty close, ended up winning outright as well. So losing day, nothing like the 19-7 weekend we had last week, but you know, I'm not too mad about the way this game ended. Sometimes you just get screwed by teams not shooting the three well. Live or die by the three in basketball nowadays. So let's move on to the games for tomorrow, Sunday. All right, going to game number one, we have Maryland on the road versus Indiana. Now, this Indiana team, I understand they've been playing really well, especially at home. They've been playing good teams tight in the Big Ten. But I just think this Maryland team is so good. I watched their last game, and they just look like they completely dominate the paint. And that is somewhere where Indiana kind of relies on all of their scoring. They don't really shoot that much outside the paint. And even though they don't technically defend their boards that well, I think this is a matchup where they might struggle a bit more than usual at getting boards. Even though Maryland isn't necessarily known to be a team that defends their own boards that well, I just don't know if it's a fantastic matchup. I don't think Indiana is that athletic. I think they're just big, and I don't know if they're going to be able to get as many boards as they want. On the other side, Maryland, the eighth best offense in the league. I think they're going to get whatever they want from three near basket. They're going to get a ton of points off steals. They're going to also get some solid offensive board opportunities. And they've been a top 10 team basically all year. And I don't even have Indiana in my top 50. Yes, they've been playing teams well, but I still think they are a little bit overrated. If you look at shot quality, they're still due for a ton of regression. Even though the record is 14-6, shot quality suggests they should only be 10-10. And Maryland, despite playing extremely well, is actually due for a slight bit of positive regression. They've been playing really well. But the biggest reason I like this matchup is if you look at the power ratings of how teams play against higher ranked teams, Indiana, when first a team in the top 25, they are ranked 286 in the nation. They do not play well against competition that is significantly better than they are. Obviously, a lot of this has happened on the road, but I think Maryland is just too good of a team. They lost to Illinois by 25 points, and this is a team that Maryland just completely crushed on the road by 21 points. They lost to an Iowa team by 25. Nebraska, they lost by 17. Again, these are teams that Maryland has beaten. So, you're giving a lot of credit for them at home, but the teams that they're beating at home recently haven't been good. They beat a Rutgers team that was really struggling at the beginning of the year, the new year. They lost to Chattanooga. They beat Minnesota, a team that also was struggling a ton before the new year. They've started to look better now. They beat Miami, Ohio, Sam Houston. They lost to Zaga, Louisville. They beat South Carolina at home, who's a team who only plays well at their own home. We could argue that their only real impressive wins this year are against Penn State and Ohio State, two teams that have been kind of fraudulent. And now they're coming off a loss against Northwestern, a mediocre team. It just seems like the second they have to play a team significantly better than them, they completely collapse. Maryland had one stinker on the road against Northwestern as well, but they just crushed a really good Illinois team. They had a tough loss against Oregon, tough loss against Washington, but they crushed Ohio State, a team that Indiana barely beat. I just think they're the better team, and they're just playing better basketball. They show up to the moment, and it seems like Indiana, that flash of scores saying that they're almost a bottom 300 team when they're playing against these elite top 25 teams, really makes me like Maryland. So I like Maryland short away favorites at -2.5. All right, heading into game number 2, we have Nebraska heading on the road to play a Wisconsin team at home. Now, this is very similar to the matchup with Maryland and Indiana. If you look at their power ratings, in terms of how they play against teams that are better than them, this Wisconsin team, when playing teams in the same rank as Nebraska, they're a really good team. They play these borderline top 25, top 50 teams extremely well. And on the other side, Nebraska is ranked 280th when they play teams in the top 25. And they play every other team really well. So I just think this is a matchup where a Wisconsin team at home, they don't really have like a massive fan base or anything, but this Nebraska team has played worse on the road. If you look at their last 5 ratings, this Nebraska team has been regressing. They're ranked outside the top 100 in their last 5, and last 5 in Wisconsin's top 15. they've been playing their best basketball all year. If you're looking just purely on trends, I think this Wisconsin team is just, despite the fact that they haven't necessarily performed that great as home favorites, Nebraska hasn't really performed that well as road dogs either. It's not a really long travel; it's 400 miles, but Nebraska is 0-4 in their last significant travels. They lost to Iowa by 10, St. Mary's by 3, Michigan State by 37. They lost to Purdue by 40 something, 36. On the other side, the Wisconsin team went playing at home. They beat Ohio State by 2, Minnesota by 21, Iowa by almost 40, Detroit, not that impressive of a win, obviously, but by 23. They definitely played down in that game, rested players. But yeah, I just think on paper, this is another spot where it's just going to be a complete dog walking by a really good Wisconsin team who I have within the top 25 right now. Nebraska outside the top 50. Really the only thing that Nebraska will find some success in is in the paint, where they typically like to shoot a lot. They're a pretty big team, but they're not really going to find success anywhere else. Not going to get a lot of second chance opportunities, no threes. And Nebraska, or this Wisconsin team, they're also probably going to find some success from three. They'll get some success in the paint. They'll get some success on the boards. I think they're just going to be the significantly better team that's played better teams. They have all the momentum going into this game. Give me a Wisconsin to win this game by double digits. All right. Heading into game number 3, we have UAB heading on the road to play Memphis. Now, this Memphis team seems to be extremely sluggish to start out games, and this UAB team, they're just a ball of energy. This team, they love to play at a pretty fast pace, and they're an extremely aggressive team. They play the offensive boards hard. They play hard defense. They are just a team that is trying to force you to give up, turnovers. They shoot the ball a shit ton, and they are extremely good on the offensive boards, top 20 in the nation. And they're playing with a lot of momentum right now compared to this Memphis team that has been playing really poorly. They finally got a win last game against Wichita State, where they didn't cover. But they really have been playing down to whoever they play. They beat Charlotte by 9, bottom, outside of a top 200 team. They beat Wichita State by 8, and outside of a top 100 team. They lost to Temple by 7. At home, they barely beat East Carolina. They barely beat North Texas. They crushed FAU on the road. They beat Mississippi at home, which is probably their most impressive win. But after the New Year's, they've been atrocious. Their last 6 games have not been impressive at all. They're 1-5 against the spread, 0-5 in their last 5 games. On the other side is UAB team. They've won 7 of their last 8. Their only loss is to North Texas, but they've been keeping it. They beat Florida Atlantic team. That's been decent. They beat Tulane, UTSA. Obviously, they haven't beat any incredible teams. Their only team they played in the top 100, they lost by 9 at home, and that was Arkansas State. In North Texas, they lost both of those. And you could argue maybe Memphis is a big step up, but I don't know, man. This Memphis team has not really impressed me, and they've been playing worse at home, and UAB has been playing better on the road. If you compare their splits, Memphis is, doesn't have a significant home advantage this year, and this UAB team has just been, playing significantly better on the road. And the big reason why I'm only taking the first half here is just the way that these teams have been starting games. Memphis outside of the top 100 in their first half rating, UAB in the top 50, and then second half UAB's, because they play so hard, it seems they get tired, they play sloppier. They're outside the top 200 in second half rating, and Memphis is a top 15 team in the second half of the game. So I think UAB can keep this game close early, just playing that, their extremely offensive style. I think they're going to get a lot of points off of turnovers. They're going to shoot the ball decently well. They're not really known to be, the best offensive team in the world. But one thing that I kind of like in this matchup is that UAB, when they do shoot, they shoot mostly mid-range shots, and that's the thing that Memphis defends the best. And when they do shoot 3 points and near basket shots, they're a top 100 team offensively. So I kind of like the idea of them being forced to take shots that they actually have better percentages on. But I don't think the shooting is what's going to keep them close in this game. I think it's just going to be offensive boards off of their missed shots. and second chance opportunities or points off steals, being aggressive offensively. Those are two things that Memphis don't do well at all defensively. So I do think Memphis ends up pulling away this game and potentially covers the big number, but I think UAB can keep it close in the first half. All right, game number 4, we have Wagner heading on the road to play St. Francis. Now, these two teams just played relatively recently on the 20th, and Wagner won that matchup by 2, and that was an overtime game. So both the teams are really bad. Like, it was one of the worst games I'd ever witnessed in my life. But now, in an extremely close matchup, now you have St. Francis in both the revenge spot and the home spot. And I do think, on paper, they're a very, very slightly better team. They are, I have them ranked as I think they're basically like this exact same team. They're both like a 325th, 330th team. They both suck. But, Wagner, St. Francis actually has a decent home advantage. They have the 40th best home advantage in the conference, or the best in the conference, 40th best in all of college basketball. So it's a pretty significant shift for them playing at home compared to playing on the road. And they technically do play, these garbage teams better than Wagner does. So I think they know that they're a slightly better team. They're the more consistent team. And they played an actually much harder schedule. I think Wagner's played almost like bottom 5 in the nation in terms of schedule. They played a bunch of bums. And I actually think that St. Francis is just the better team. They shoot the mid-range, top 75 in the nation. They don't shoot the 3, they shoot the 3, top 200. They're not really good anywhere else. But they're okay outside of the arc. Like they have some success. On the other end, Wagner doesn't do anything well offensively. They are one of the worst, 360th in offensive efficiency. And yeah, I look at this matchup. I think St. Francis is going to get technically more free throws, even though they don't shoot the free throw that well. They shoot it better than Wagner. If the game does come down to the wire, I think St. Francis can cover if they're, only up 1 or 2 and Wagner's fouling. Yeah, I think St. Francis wins this. It's a really disgusting game, and you could probably argue on either side. But I do think revenge, home game, slightly better team, harder schedule, more consistent team, and the faster-paced team that's going to probably have more chances. I do like St. Francis to cover this short 2.5-point spread. All right, and the final game, we got Illinois at home versus Northwestern. Now, I think we're getting a really good price on this Illinois team because they just got absolutely dog-walked by Maryland. But I do think they are a solid borderline top 10 team in college basketball. And even though they've kind of regressed a little bit in the last few games, I think that they are just a much better team than this Northwestern team. They seem to struggle a little bit against the top 25, but they really play well against these teams that are in like the top 50, but not in the top 25. They're one of the best teams in dominating slightly worse competition than they are. And the last times that Northwestern has had to travel, they've gotten, they've kept games relatively close. They lost to Michigan by 4. They lost Iowa by 1. They lost to Purdue by 18. But now you're getting this Illinois spot team in a must-win situation. They just lost 2 games. They just got completely embarrassed. I'm sure the coach gave them a lot of talking to in the locker room. It's the first time they've lost 2 games in a row all season. They lost 3 of their last 4. They lost to USC at home as well. And then now they lost to Maryland by 21. I think we're getting a really good price just based off of the recent performance of Northwestern, beating Indiana, keeping it close against Michigan, beating Maryland, keeping it close against Michigan State, keeping it close against Penn State, keeping it close against Iowa. And the last time these two teams played at home, at Northwestern's home, Illinois lost by 4 points. So this is not only a revenge spot, it is a bounce-back spot at home where Illinois has played their best basketball. Yes, this Northwestern team has been playing really well, but again, I just think there's no way they lose 3 games in a row. I think they're going to come out of this game extremely hot. I might even take first half -4 and get 3.5. I might take it. I think it's going to be a wake-up call spot for them. But yeah, if you look at their matchup, I have them as a top 15 team. Northwestern, just inside the top 50. They play much better at home. They're an extremely fast-paced team compared to Northwestern. So if they're able to dictate the pace, I think Northwestern is going to be uncomfortable trying to keep up. Northwestern is one of the teams that rely heavily on points off of second chance opportunities, points off steals. Illinois is one of the best teams at defending their own boards, and they don't really turn the ball over that much. And in terms of shooting, Northwestern's not that great of a team. They only shoot mid-range shots, and Illinois is top 10 defense in college basketball. So if you're not able to get second chance opportunities and your shots aren't falling, it's kind of hard to win games. On the other side, this Illinois team, I don't think they're going to have too much success, but they're not a great three-point shooting team. They just huck up a lot of them. But again, this Northwestern team is outside the top 100 in defending the three. I think Illinois' three-point percentage is really low because of the competition that they've had to play. 25th hardest schedule. I think they're going to find success from outside the arc, especially in this must-win spot. I know if they have to, I think they have a good chance to do well in the paint as well. So I do think Illinois is going to bounce back big time this game. There's just too many angles and specifics that I feel like lean towards Illinois covering. All right, those are the 5 games that I like today. In order of the order that I like these games, I would say Wisconsin number 1, Maryland number 2, Illinois number 3, UAB number 4, and St. Francis number 5. Mostly because St. Francis is still bottom 300 team. They're extremely unpredictable, and those players don't care. They don't live and breathe basketball like some of these other teams. So hopefully we can have a better day today. Yesterday was really frustrating, especially considering almost all of my losses were just from teams shooting like below 10% from 3. Auburn didn't shoot 3 well. God, I'm already forgetting them because all those games pissed me off. Who else didn't shoot well from 3? TCU didn't shoot well from 3. West Virginia didn't shoot well from 3. Like, 3 ball has been really killing me. And Creighton also, I think they were like 1 in 14 from 3 in the first half, and that game was way too close because they weren't hitting their threes, even though they were dominating the game. It looked really close, a lot closer than it should have been. So, live and die by the 3 in basketball. It's starting to really become a thing in college basketball too, because I think a lot of these players are seeing how important it is for these scouts that you can shoot the 3. Even freaking Zach Edey had to start shooting 3s because he thought the scouts wouldn't be interested. So yeah, if you have any questions, any leans, check the spreadsheet for the other games. And yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow.